I'm Rodney Ellis, and I'd appreciate your vote. We've done a lot of videos. Normally do these campaign videos, and they're about 2 minutes at most. This conversation is too important to cut it down to 2 minutes, so we're going to run the entire 20 minutes. I would appreciate your support. I think these two gentlemen give you some idea of who I am and what's in my heart. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Cornelius Dupree and Anthony Robinson for coming to be with me today. I've known both of you for a very long time. Obviously, it is campaign time, and I'm in a hot race, and I'm taking it seriously. And one area that I'm really honored to be able to focus on from my time in the legislature and my time now at Commissioners Court is the criminal justice space. And sometimes we don't really put a face on these issues when we talk about it. So I want to have a casual conversation with you two. Normally when we do these videos, it takes about a minute. This one might be a bit longer because the issue is just so important. But both of your life stories were helpful to me in my former life in public service when I was in the legislature, because I could take the story of Cornelius Dupree and the story of Anthony Robinson and turn that into tangible legislation. And here on the local level at Harris County, we're repeating that. Bail reform was really about people whose lives were impacted. And that is what led to litigation, and it's what led to a historic settlement on misdemeanor bail. The issue of felony bail will be more complicated, more important is down the road. I know in both of your cases you had court-appointed lawyers. That was a public defender in Dallas, and I know you walked through some of this, but you didn't get the public defender. In Dallas it is overextended, yes, by the way, historically has been, but you ended up with a court-appointed lawyer. You might have been better off with the public defender, at least there was some way to measure it. Yeah. But you had a court-appointed lawyer, and I'm just going to say what little I remember. In your case, it was 30 years in prison for a crime that you didn't commit. Innocence Project took on your case. I had the privilege of chairing that board when Barry Sheck and Peter Newfield decided to break it off from Cardozo Law School and set up a separate 501c3. And they asked me to chair that board. I think in part they asked me to chair the board over your case. Anthony, I saw an article in the Houston Chronicle, I think, about your case during the interim of 2000. And that's what prompted me to call you, and we met. And it's interesting, you were my first exoneree to go into the Texas Legislative Internship Program. And you were the poster child for the DNA testing statute, which is how you got out, for the bill to increase the compensation for the wrongfully convicted. Back then we went from what was it 5,000 period?
I think it was like 20,000 period. 20,000
period, and I think we got it up to 25,000 a year, capped at 250,000. We also passed the Fair Defense Act, yes, which gave every county in Texas the ability to create a public defender's office if they wanted to. I did have to compromise and say that 2/3 of the judges had to agree. We put in caseload standards. We came up with some state money for the first time to go to counties for indigent defense, but you were the poster child on that. I mean, sometimes I would say your name should have been on all those bills instead of me. And then we had you help out a bit with the hate crimes bill, which arguably was a law and order bill. But it is interesting, both of you all were interns, yes, because obviously you were out there as a day laborer, Anthony, trying to figure out what to do, and Cornelius, you know, you were just waiting to get the letter so you could get the compensation for the state money. So I can remember seeing an article about your paper, about your case in the New York Times, an editorial around the King holiday.
Yes.
And I called you and said, hey, you were in the New York Times in an editorial, the lead editorial, go pull it. And you said, well, where can I get it? Because you hadn't been out that long. And then I thought about it, and I was wondering, where would you find a New York Times in the neighborhood you were in at the time? And so I think I had whoever was helping me out that would kind of get me around to go buy one or take my New York Times and give it to you. And that's when I really thought about it and figured we'd put you in the TLIP program as well. But Anthony, let's start with you. Tell us your story.
I want to say, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here in any capacity to help you, because the work that you've done over the course of your service in public life, your public service, you have touched the lives of many Texans. You have given men and women back their lives with the legislation you've passed. one of the things that you didn't mention was something that I think is really crucial, and that is one of your bills in the criminal justice reform package that you passed requires district attorneys, requires police departments to record their interrogations. So there's no more browbeating someone or waiting them out or stressing them out and then getting a confession. That has given a lot of people a foundation to stand on. And again, my life has changed, was transformed by your phone call. You gave me my life back. I mean, I had pretty much come to the conclusion that after I got my pardon, that I was just gonna quietly slide out of Texas and go back to California and get whatever job I had open. Well, it was your suggestion that I pursue a dream that I had before I went to prison, and I was going to law school. With your mentoring, with your guidance and your support, and you know this, not only did I go, but I graduated.
Hey, maybe I encourage you, but hey, you had to go through that and take that bar exam. You were lucky because, as I recall in your case, you're a veteran.
Yes, sir.
And you've been honorably discharged.
Yes, sir.
And you had a degree from Pomona College.
Yes, sir.
Which is part of that, is it the Claremont?
The Claremont College. Yes, sir.
Which would be kind of like a Trinity University. I compare it to Trinity in San Antonio.
Yes, sir.
And then you were here, and were you in Houston working at an automotive place?
Yes, sir.
And what happened?
I was working at an automotive place, just trying to get, decompress, get back into the world as a civilian. And a friend of mine at the University of Houston, she called me up and said, hey, I have a problem with my car. Can you help me out? I went to the university campus to pick up her car and drop it off at a brake check on my way to work. Well, as I was on campus, a campus police unit pulled up behind me, and I'm thinking, okay, they just want to get me off campus. I don't fit. I'm very familiar with that from being in Los Angeles with the University of Southern California there. There's on the cusp of the ghetto, basically. And so you're on the cusp, they roust you off, get off, get off, get off, get off. So that's all I thought it was. But when he pulled me out of the car and put the handcuffs on me and stood me up, another police cruiser came up, he pulls my jacket back over my handcuffed arms and says, this is him. Essentially, this is him. Is this him? And the word was, whatever the word was, I wound up being put in the police car. So apparently I was on a show identification, I was ID'd. I hadn't even been on the campus 5 minutes. I had no idea what had gone on. I had no idea what had happened. I thought I was just being, ushered off the campus. Well, then that turned into basically a year waiting for my case to come to trial, a 3-day trial, a conviction for 27 years TDC. And I had never seen
And the charge was rape.
the victim. Yes, sir.
27 years you were given.
I had never seen the victim. Didn't know who the victim was had no clue. But I knew I was looking at 27 years. And from the work that I'd done when I was going to school, I understood that 20 years was the life expectancy of a person incarcerated. So I'm thinking, okay, I will be dead 7 years before they let me out. Well, after I got out, and I got out as a result of the overcrowding in Texas prisons at that time, I just wanted to get...
You got out after 10 years.
Yes, sir, after 10 years.
And then you got out, and although we didn't have a DNA testing statute
Oh, God, I wish you had.
in Texas, you had to find someone
Yes, sir.
who would go to court.
And-
How did you get the evidence to go get the DNA test?
Well, luckily, I had a little bit of experience, a little bit of knowledge about evidence, because I did want to go to law school before I went to prison.
As I recall, you told me you thought about applying to the University of Houston.
Yes, sir. I had been accepted before, not accepted. I had, put out some feelers to see if I could get into law school when I got out of the service. I was like, okay, I can go back now. I've got GI Bill, whatever, and I can get in. California has something very similar to Hazelwood. If you're a California vet, you can go to school. So my thinking was, go back home, work a little bit, get into school, and see what you can make of yourself after, after all this stuff. But what happened was, I got out and I was canvassing attorneys, and then my attorney, Randy Schaefer, was number 13. He was the 13th attorney I went to. And he basically said, look, don't, pretty much to boil it down to, don't waste my time. If you did it, don't waste my time.
Because you're out. And you obviously you're still on papers.
Yes, sir.
you still been monitored and all, but you had gotten out after 10 years, and you could have just gone on with your life, challenged as it would have been, but you decided you wanted still to make the case because DNA was of age, although we didn't have a statute, and you petitioned to get whatever the court had. Now, obviously, you put your own body up so you could get the DNA tested.
Oh, yes, sir. I basically told Randy, whatever you need. I said, if I have to sell a kidney, I will pay you. Just trust me enough to take my case. And he basically said, you know, I'm not going to do anything until you pay. You have to pay for the representation. So if you're wasting my time, you're not wasting my time, you're wasting your money. So I did what I needed to do.
And you were day laborer, you told me.
Yes,
so
sir.
you go out to sites and get work.
I was working for a day labor company. You work, you get paid that evening. So I did basically whatever I could. I was collecting aluminum cans. I worked for day labor, and then finally I got a break on a temporary job.
And I saw the article in the paper, and you were holding your part.
Yes, sir.
Were you, do you know if you were the first person to get exonerated or pardoned from DNA evidence in Texas?
I believe that I was.
Okay.
At least
I have to check. That was the first one, at least, that I knew about.
Out of Harris County. Well, let's see. Roy Kreiner got one also, but Roy's case was different. So I guess
I remember the Kreiner case. Was that one before you or was after you?
Yes, sir. It was before. In fact, Randy Schaefer handled Roy's case, and that was one of those things somebody said, hey, he just handled the case, so I can't be. It has to be Roy. And so after that...
And DNA was kind of coming of age because we had the, you know, President Pro Tem of the Senate back then. You had a case, the Kreiner case.
Yes, sir.
So when, which was before yours, because whenever, at least during the 50 or so days, I was acting governor, being President Pro Tem. If Governor Bush was out and Lieutenant Governor Perry out of the state, then I'd be acting governor. Then I remember giving a reprieve to being executed to Roy Kreiner. But we didn't have a statute in Texas. And I think it was looking like after that Kreiner case, there would be bipartisan support to pass a bill. But one reason why I was glad to have you in the internship program was first we could put a face on increasing the compensation for people wrongfully convicted. I do remember asking if you had any priors, although it would not have been relevant. I just figured veteran, you had the bachelor's degree. Back then you got a master's degree while you were in prison, right?
Yes, sir.
U of H, Clear Lake?
Yes, sir.
And you said you wanted to go to law school. I clearly remember when we decided try to raise money for you to go, and I called prominent attorney Joe Jamel, hoping he'd just give $5,000. And instead, he gave about $35,000, which essentially paid.
That was a blessing.
And the day I met you, I remember when I called your lawyer, I said, I want to meet you. And he said, well, when do you want to meet him? I said, today, like in an hour, because I didn't want him to prep you. Because I was kind of like him, wanted to make sure. I knew I wanted to pass that compensation bill. And you did a great job, so I want to thank you.
Sir, I want to thank you for even caring enough to look at the paper to see my face. I had written letters over the 10 years I was in. I had written letters. I had done all kinds of things to all kinds of institutions to try to get help. I even tried to borrow the money for the DNA test. While I was in prison, I wrote a letter to a very prominent entertainer, and I wrote her a letter, and I said, just loan me the money. I will pay you back. I still haven't heard.
Well, that's why the statute's so important, because in Texas, no matter what you said, it wouldn't have been possible to get the evidence the state had without a statute that required that it be tested. Other bill that we passed, which helped, by the way, was the one to ban executing people who were considered mentally retarded. The term is not politically correct, but in the statute, that's the term we had to use. And of course, we did get that bill passed, but it was vetoed. Then we turn to you, Cornelius. In your case, it was one by then. I was chairing the Board of Innocence Project, so this is 2000. And then we passed the DNA testing statute in 2001. I think in 2003, they asked me to go on the Board of Innocence Project and chair it, which I did for 14 years. I stepped down once I left the Senate, end of my first year here in county government. What year did your case?
Oh, it's 2010.
2010?
Yes, sir.
So imagine it's a statute that we get passed in 2001. You got your pardon for innocence without it. And then by 2010, we had a statute. Still had to go back and improve it. That's what you're talking about along the way because of new technology that came up. But so, in your case, you wrote to the Innocence Project, how did it?
Yes. But first of all, Senator, I would like to say thank you very much for all you have done. Not just for me, but for all exonerees of Texas. I don't know if you know, but they really look up to you as a mentor, as someone who really paved the way for people who were wrongly in prison. And I get heartfelt each time I talk about it, because I feel like I owe you so much, It's been so many dark days and dark nights in prison. I mean, and considering my losses, not to say mine are any different from anyone else, but the loss of my mom and my dad while I was in prison, not able to go to the funeral.
30 years.
30 years.
And you were arrested at 19.
19 years old.
Went to jail at 20? Or they kept you in?
Went to jail at 19 and got out of prison at 51. And it was, it's been many dark days and dark nights, and I just really commend you on the work that you do. Words can't express how heartfelt, that I feel toward the things that you do. So keep up the good work.
I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
I remember when you were interning, I think I told the story earlier about telling you in the New York Times and saying, go pick one up, as though you had no idea what a cell phone worked like. I mean, it was a whole different world when you came out. But I remember we were trying to get that, we were doing something, the Tim Cole Act, and one bill in particular was something about police lineups or something. I know we were at a meeting in Mayor Anise Parker's office. I think she was mayor. I can't remember. Well, we were at City Hall, whoever it was, Bill White. We were in the mayor's office with the police chief and Barry Scheck and you.
Yes.
And I know you will say, well, what can I do in the internship program? I think you were wondering if we were just doing something to help you until this was sorted out so you could get your compensation from the state. Because our challenge is getting the three writings. You have to get the judge, the arresting entity, and the DA. Yes. Under the statute we passed. I mean, it's what we had to take to get it done. So if the court says you were wrongfully convicted, that's not enough. If the DA said it's not enough. Yes. If the police department, well, we were in there, and the best arguments I could come up with, Barry Scheck, all his arguments. So, Barry with his, I guess, Harvard or Yale law degree, with, my Texas Southern and UT degrees, we weren't getting anywhere. And then when you open your mouth as someone who was a victim of the system, it changed the whole dynamic in the mayor's office. And as a result of that, the police chief of Houston supported that bill, and we got it passed. So. Yes.
Again, I also want to thank, I really give props to Craig Watkins of Dallas.
Yes.
The head DA there who allowed, people, the Innocence Project, to come in and kind of review cases.
He didn't fight with us.
Yes.
Most DAs around the country would fight tooth and nail, but Craig Watkins, really was a great partner in that regard on your case and many others.
But again, I just can't express enough, Commissioner, of all the hard work you've done, and I hope and pray that you continue to do, because there are still many other exonerees, I believe, in prison, people who are innocent, who were falsely in prison, that's struggling and trying to get out. And we need, people like yourself, in places, to kind of be the voice of those men and women who are in prison to give them a second chance.
Well, I would take all of your stories. The Innocence Project would just focus on people who were wrongfully convicted. And I would take each of your cases to really use each of you as a poster child. Sometimes I feel guilty, but I take your life tragedy and try to turn that into a policy that would help so many other people. And even now here on the local level, that's what I'm trying to do. Because it is interesting, both cases, you had a court-appointed lawyer who obviously sometimes was more interested in being beholden to the judge that appointed them than you. At least, but not saying that's the case with all court-appointed lawyers. But that's why we have pushed to create a public defender's office here in Harris County. You were a part of that back when I was in the Senate. Now, of course, I'm a county commissioner, and also trying to remove hurdles that come up, making sure that we adequately fund the public defender's office. When they set it up, when I got to Commissioner's Court, it was only handling 8% of the cases. And now we're up to maybe 20%. Hopefully by the end of this year, it'll be at 30%. We're pushing for a MAC, Managed Assigned Counsel. So somebody other than the judge here in your case or your case decides who the lawyer is that's representing you. So we've got a lot more work to do. So that's why I'm running for re-election.
Anthony Robinson, sentenced to 27 years TDC, served 10 years.
Cornelius Dupree, 30 years in Texas Department of Criminal Justice.